There's a truth that modern society has buried under layers of taboos, convenient lies, and empty distractions. A truth Napoleon Hill understood in its purest essence, and that few men dared to confront: the power residing in the transmutation of sexual energy. But here's the question that should keep you up at night. Why can women, with their ancestral intuition and sharp energetic perception, instead identify a man who masters his life force from one who surrenders to primal urges? Have you noticed how certain male presences fill a room without a word being spoken? How some men carry a magnetic aura that attracts respect, admiration, and female desire, almost supernatural? It's no coincidence. It's not privileged genetics or lucky fate. It's the direct result of an inner alchemy. If you understand, and even fewer practice, the conscious transmutation of sexual energy into personal power, creativity, and magnetism. Contemporary society has sold us a devastating lie. It convinced us that sexual liberation is synonymous with freedom, that satisfying every impulse is healthy, that repressing desires is neurotic. But this narrative completely ignores the vast difference between repression and transmutation. Napoleon Hill wasn't talking about denying sexuality. It was talking about raising its frequency, transforming raw energy into refined power. When a man compulsively masturbates, when he seeks instant gratification and emptiness, when ejaculation becomes an automatic escape from life's tensions, he's literally draining his life force, not just physically, although semen contains zinc, proteins, and concentrated energy, but energetically. Every ejaculation without a consciously directed purpose is a hemorrhage of creative potential, a bleeding of personal magnetism. Women perceive this because they are, by nature, receivers and amplifiers of energy. They sense the difference between a man who wastes his vital essence and one who cultivates it with reverence. It's a perception that operates beyond the intellect, in the deepest layers of feminine intuition. They recognize the presence of a man who conserves his sexual energy, because that conservation manifests in every aspect of his being, in the confidence he radiates, the clarity of his eyes, the firmness of his voice, the stability of his presence. Think of history's great leaders, the artists who changed the world, the visionaries who built empires. Many of them intuitively understood the power of sexual transmutation. Tesla, who remained celibate for decades, channeling his sexual energy into revolutionary inventions. Gandhi, who practiced brahmacharya, transforming desire into spiritual and political power. Napoleon Hill documented this pattern among hundreds of successful men he interviewed. Those who learned to master their sexual impulses invariably demonstrated greater creativity, mental focus, and personal magnetism. But let's delve deeper into the energetic mechanics of this process. When a man consciously retains his semen, not through neurotic repression, but through intentional transmutation, something extraordinary happens in his nervous and energetic system. The energy that would normally be dissipated through ejaculation is redirected to the higher centers of consciousness. The Chinese Taoists called this cultivating Jing essence. Indian yogis knew it as the conservation of Ojas Shakti. What happens physically is fascinating. Testosterone, instead of being regulated by cycles of arousal and release, maintains more stable and elevated levels. The nervous system doesn't experience the post-orgasmic depletion that generates lethargy, anxiety, and brain fog. Sexual energy, which is fundamentally creative energy, remains available for projects, visions, and accomplishments, and women perceive this. They sense it in the vibration of the male voice, which becomes deeper and more resonant. They perceive it in the gaze, which gains intensity and presence. They recognize it in the body posture, which becomes more erect and confident. They identify it in the charisma, which naturally intensifies. It's not something that can be faked or simulated. It's a real energetic emanation, measurable in subtle terms, but perceptible to any woman attuned to her intuition. But beware, here's where many men get lost. Retaining semen without transmutation is like damming a river without creating channels for the water to flow productively. The retained sexual energy needs to be consciously directed, or it will become neurotic pressure, irritability, and obsession. True sexual transmutation requires mental discipline, spiritual practices, intense physical activity, and above all, a clear purpose. Napoleon Hill observed that the most magnetic men were those who channeled retained sexual energy into grand projects, ambitious visions, artistic creations, or spiritual development. They didn't simply hold the energy, they directed it. Like a dammed river that powers turbines to generate electricity, conserved sexual energy must be transformed into a driving force for accomplishments. Women intuitively recognize this difference. They distinguish the man who practices retention with purpose from the one who merely struggles against impulses. The former radiates controlled magnetism, stable presence, and natural confidence. The latter may display repressed tension, irritability, or stagnant energy. True transmutation produces men who are simultaneously calmer and more intense, more centered and more dynamic. There's an alchemic dimension to this process that transcends the purely physical. In Hermetic tradition, sexual transmutation represents the transformation of lead into gold, the elevation of basic, instinctual energy into refined consciousness and spiritual power. The man who masters this art isn't denying his sexual nature, but elevating it to higher expressions. This manifests in multiple dimensions of the male experience. Mentally conserved sexual energy fuels clarity of thought, deep concentration, and expanded creativity. Emotionally, it generates stability, genuine confidence, and magnetic presence. Spiritually, it develops willpower, inner discipline, and connection with higher purposes. Women perceive these qualities because they represent exactly what the feminine seeks in the masculine, not brute domination or uncontrolled aggression, but integrated power, directed strength, vital energy at its maximum potential. The man who consciously conserves his sexual energy offers the world his most powerful and refined version. Let's be upfront about the challenges. Our current culture actively works against this practice. We're constantly bombarded with sexual stimuli, ubiquitous pornography, an entire industry dedicated to draining male sexual energy for commercial gain. Compulsive masturbation has become a socially acceptable addiction, normalized as a biological need or sexual health. If this information resonates deeply within you, if something inside is being awakened by these words, don't let this moment pass. There's a growing community of men rediscovering these ancestral principles and applying them to modern life. If you feel it's time to elevate your existence, to awaken the magnetism and power that has always resided within you, then join this journey. Subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell to receive each new revelation on sexual transmutation, personal power development, and masculine magnetism, because this isn't just information, it's the key to unlocking versions of yourself you never thought possible. The modern man has become a slave to his impulses without even realizing it. Every click on pornography, every automatic masturbation session, every wasted ejaculation is a vote against his own power. His vital energy being drained, magnetism dissipated, presence diminished. And women, on their deepest levels of perception, feel this energetic depletion. That's why men who engage in excessive pornography often report difficulties in real connections with women. It's not just erectile dysfunction or desensitization, it's real energetic depletion. They literally lack the magnetic charge necessary to attract and maintain genuine female interest. In contrast, men who practice sexual transmutation report completely different experiences. Longer gazes from women, conversations that flow naturally, a sense that their presence is more impactful. It's not imagination. It's a direct result of conscious conservation and direction of sexual energy. Modern science is beginning to understand mechanisms that ancient traditions intuitively knew. Studies on male pheromones show that men with more stable and elevated hormone levels produce chemical signals that women unconsciously find more attractive. Research on body language reveals that genuine, not artificially inflated, confidence communicates through hundreds of nonverbal microsignals. But let's delve deeper into the psychological dimension. When a man consciously decides to conserve his sexual energy, is making a fundamental declaration to his subconscious. I am capable of mastering my most primal impulses. This declaration completely reprograms his self-image and self-confidence. The opposite is also true. Every time a man succumbs to compulsive sexual impulses, especially through pornography and masturbation, he sends a subliminal message to his subconscious. I have no control over my basic desires. This programming manifests as subtle insecurity, lack of confidence in other areas of life, a feeling of not deserving success or respect. Women perceive this difference in self-esteem because it manifests in every interaction. The man who masters his sexual energy carries a confidence that doesn't need to be proven, it simply exists. His words carry weight, his decisions have conviction, his presence has substance. Napoleon Hill observed that successful men frequently demonstrated this quality of focused presence. They didn't waste energy on empty distractions, didn't get lost in momentary impulses. Their energy was consistently directed towards larger goals, significant projects, visions that transcended immediate gratification. This concentration of energy becomes personal magnetism. It's like the difference between diffuse light and laser light. The same energy, intensely focused, acquires a completely different power of penetration and impact. Sexual energy, when conserved and directed, becomes a force of extraordinary accomplishment. But here's a crucial aspect that many neglect. Sexual transmutation is not about permanent celibacy or denial of sexuality. It's about awareness, intention, and direction. A married man can practice sexual transmutation by consciously channeling that energy into his relationship, his family, his joint projects. A single man can direct it towards creativity, professional ambitions, spiritual development. The central point is that the energy isn't wasted on empty gratifications, but consciously invested in higher expressions. And that difference between waste and investment is exactly what women intuitively perceive. There's also a profound spiritual dimension to this practice. Many traditions consider semen a sacred substance, a concentration of life force and creative potential. To waste it casually is like burning money, a dissipation of a precious resource that could generate real abundance. Taoists taught that each ejaculation costs a man about 3 days of vital energy to fully recover. Multiply that by frequent ejaculations, and you have a man consistently operating below his energetic potential. This manifests as chronic fatigue, lack of motivation, difficulty concentrating, reduced creativity. The man who conserves his sexual energy, on the other hand, operates from full energetic reserves. He wakes up more rested, maintains focus for longer periods, demonstrates more consistent creativity, possesses superior physical and mental endurance. Women perceive this expanded vitality because it radiates through every aspect of his presence. But don't make the mistake of thinking this is purely about suppression. True sexual transmutation requires conscious sublimation, transforming sexual energy into other forms of creative expression. This can happen through intense physical exercise, which channels vital energy into bodily strength and vitality, through artistic projects, which transform sexual passion into creative expression, through professional ambitions, which direct sexual drive towards accomplishment and success. Men who master this art often report periods of intense creativity, exceptional mental clarity, periods of productivity that previously seemed impossible. It's as if the previously dispersed energy concentrates into a powerful beam of directed accomplishment. And women are drawn to this concentrated energy because it represents stability, potential, emotional security. A man who demonstrates self-control in an area as fundamental as sexuality signals an ability to discipline himself in all other areas of life. This generates natural confidence and genuine attraction. There's a profound irony here. Men who compulsively pursue sex often become less sexually attractive. Their energy is constantly depleted, their magnetism diminished, their presence weakened. Men who consciously conserve sexual energy naturally become more magnetic, attractive, desirable. This doesn't mean playing games or manipulation. It's a natural result of optimized energetic operation, like a machine running on high-quality fuel instead of constantly draining its tank. The transformation happens on multiple levels simultaneously. Physically, through expanded energy and increased vitality. Mentally, through enhanced clarity and intensified focus. Emotionally, through natural stability and confidence. Spiritually, through connection with higher purposes and developed willpower. Women perceive this holistic transformation because the feminine is naturally attuned to holistic energy. They don't just see superficial appearances. They sense the overall energetic quality a man radiates. And that quality changes dramatically when sexual energy is consciously conserved and directed. But let's address common resistances. Many men argue that sexual retention is unnatural, that frequent ejaculation is biologically necessary. This perspective completely ignores the difference between real biological need and cultural conditioning. Our ancestors, living without the constant sexual stimulation of modern media, naturally conserved sexual energy for fertile periods with actual partners. Daily compulsive ejaculation is a modern phenomenon, a result of artificial overstimulation and the constant availability of sexual material. It's not a natural biological need, it's an addiction created and fueled by contemporary culture. Men who break this pattern often discover that their true sexual needs are far less than they imagined. What they thought was biological drive was, in fact, a compulsive habit fueled by constant external stimulation. The journey of sexual transmutation is simultaneously simple and challenging.